Good afternoon, and welcome to the latest edition of my podcast, Mañana, where I interview the great and the good of the industry on the sort of subject of leaving things to tomorrow and just all sorts of subjects around that. And I'm delighted to say that this edition I have Ali Crossley, who is Managing Director of Legal and General Distribution. Hi, Ali, how are you?
Hello, Roy. I'm very well, thank you very much. How are you?
Yes, very good. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming on. I mean, it seems quite a few years since I last spoke to you on a podcast, probably 4 or 5 years ago, when I think you were a little bit newer to legal in general in your role. So
Yes,
a few things changed in the last 5 years.
it probably was. Yeah, it's been a busy time, but yes, I'm sure it was all a bit of a mystery to me back then. It still is to some extent.
I mean, I've got a few subjects to talk to you about. I guess, let's talk about the flavour of the day and things that are happening out there at the moment. I mean, it does feel that financial services is starting to get more of a political perspective, and we are getting mentioned a little bit more now. Rachel Reeves is actively talking about things like targeted support, and I heard him talking about consumer duty. And how important it is for you the politicians recognise financial services and the role that we have?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question, really broad question, that, Roy. I mean, I suppose, in summary, I think it's you know, sometimes when the regulator gets really involved, the government gets really involved, you kind of think, oh, now what are they going to look at? But actually, I think broadly speaking, they're very supportive of the advisory community, and I think anything, targeted support you just mentioned, anything that helps to give access to some kind of support for groups of customers that otherwise would, in all likelihood, have no support, has to be a good thing. I mean, and there are some things going on in the market generally, which, CP25, I'm thinking particularly in the mortgage space, which is obviously essentially around encouraging direct, execution only mortgages, which sounds good in theory, but this isn't buying a sort of holiday insurance. These are products that are, buying a mortgage is a really, really massively big decision. So I think it's a good idea in theory, but in practice, my concerns would be around safeguarding that they giving ourselves reassurance that customers end up with the right product. So yes, overall, I think it's a good thing, not least because it makes everybody, including ourselves, big insurers, think about, are we doing as much as we can for customers?
And it also, for me, resonates with the growth agenda that we keep hearing about. I mean, blatantly, the country's got some, let's say, some challenges at the moment. But I think, the way of getting out a lot of this is to grow our way out of this. I mean, personally, I believe that our industry is integral to part of that solution. Would you concur with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, absolutely, Roy. I mean, we're committed to all channels of distribution. We distribute most of our products through all of the channels. But certainly in my part of Legal in General, about 90% in total of our products, of our total sales, are distributed through some kind of B2B channel or another. So
And would
incredibly
you
important.
say
Ours are at the heart of our industry.
would you say that there's still a slight concern that the numbers of advisors out there are still low? I mean, broadly, depending on who you listen to, there's probably about 25,000 of us. Is that enough to service, the number of people that probably need financial services help?
No, probably not. And it does concern me that fewer people seem to be going into the industry, into the profession. I think that is a concern. No, I mean, I think the fact that there are definitely more people needing advice that can't get access to advice, and that's very largely linked to how much money they've got, whether or not they can afford the advice. So I think that's where, AI and other sorts of technology can probably help to provide more support for customers who otherwise wouldn't get it, by virtue either because they don't have enough money to invest, or because there simply, as you say, aren't enough advisors to meet the needs of all of those customers.
And I guess you're going to also mention the backdrop of, the cost of living crisis that's around. And to your point, not everyone's got the extra money to be spending on protection. But it's fascinating you've mentioned AI, which is next on my list. So a very good segue into that. I mean, as one of the leading insurers in the UK,
Yeah.
AI let's talk about advisors first of all. Friend or foe to the advisory community?
Oh, well, I mean, It should absolutely be a friend, Roy. I mean, I know there's going to be a lot of concern around, oh, is it going to remove jobs? I think what my big hope is, and what it should do, is enable the sort of admin, the more sort of step and repeat type processes that happen at the beginning of a conversation, often the fact finding type conversations, which could be done by some kind of technology, whether it's AI or anything else. So it should absolutely enable advisors to be more efficient, to take out cost, and to serve more customers, and to get to the value added part of the conversation rather than the more admin part of the conversation. It should be absolutely a friend to intermediaries. Early days though, in terms of seeing I mean, I think it's going to catch up very quickly, but it is early days in terms of adoption for most firms.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I totally concur, but I mean, there are a few sorts of dinosaurs still walking around our industry, unfortunately, for some reason perceive that it's bad news for advisors. But you're very much taking the opposite, that it can help us and make our jobs easier, and maybe give us a bit more time in front of our customers, which is probably what's needed.
Completely. I mean, anything that helps us to reduce wait times on phones, or, application processing times, anything that can help us to do that has got to be a good thing for the customer. And as I say, for our cost base, to be perfectly honest. So, yeah, I see it as a very much a positive thing. And I mean, there's no stopping it. The train is moving fast, so we have to get on it. And I think it's about identifying what the use cases are in each firm, and certainly that's the case at Legal in General. What are the use cases that are going to really help us to drive efficiency so we can serve more customers ultimately, is really the exam question. And there's some really exciting use cases that we can see. So yeah, definitely wholeheartedly embracing it.
So we need to tell the Luddites to put down their pitchforks and move away
Yes,
and get on with it, basically.
I'm afraid we do, because it's as I say, the train is moving very fast, so they'll have to get on it.
Do you get a sense of? I mean, obviously, I'm got one foot in the wealth space. I've got one foot in the protection space, one foot in the investment space. Do you get and Legal in General, obviously, a very good example of a company that transcends all those areas. Do you think there's an element of we need to be very joined up there so that all of those particular areas are moving basically at the same pace?
Definitely. And that is a really good question. In fact, in my own role, which has gone from being quite vertically focused on the business line, which was originally about life insurance, about protection, to now my role is completely horizontal across all of retail's products, and leading into the asset management side, where we're supporting, the broader L&G offerings too. And what's interesting is that I and my team, more importantly, my team is having increasingly horizontal type of conversations where, our partners are wanting to talk to us about not just one thing, not just protection, but also about how we can use annuities, or, how we could use a lifetime mortgage, how the whole range of financial assets is supporting a customer's retirement planning, for example. So definitely broader conversations are the theme in terms of the conversations I'm having.
And presumably also the journey that the consumer has with AI, in terms of if there's something that's working very well on their pensions journey or on their savings journey, could be read across to protection journey and vice versa.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, yeah. And it should really help customers to see their whole portfolio of assets and how they can make them work harder for them, or the optimum way to organize all of those different assets. It's no longer acceptable to just talk about one bucket of assets. So yeah, completely.
Do you think that for helps? I mean, the industry is still charged with, the fact that it still runs in a little bit of silos. I'm talking about the advisory side of it, and people tend to specialize in things. Will this ultimately help in breaking down those silos so that we become much more holistic? I mean, I guess the end consumer doesn't mind if I bring a colleague who specializes in this, a colleague specializes in that, but will it help the industry? Solve the thing that you've just alluded to, which is actually the customer just wants one body to solve all of their solutions, and they're all related.
They do. And a sort of link to that, it used to be the case that probably only a year ago, where, for example, we would have more than one car in the car park of L&G employees. We might have 5 or 6 different people visiting, say, a St James's Place would be a really good example. Now we have one, because we, as I say, they only wanted to have one conversation and having a broader conversation. And I think, yes, that they, of course, you're always going to have specialists. And in my own team, we're now going through an upskilling program where the goal is each of the salespeople are able to talk confidently across all of the retail products. But they still specialize, for example, in protection, but they're able to talk confidently about annuities as well, just because in case that comes up in conversation, and increasingly it is.
Yeah, and the fact of the matter is that I think most advisors will now talk about cash flow modeling at some sort of the process. And for me, cash flow model needs to have all of those, because protection, which maybe was traditionally forgotten as part of cash flow modeling, is actually something that you need to plug in, because when things go wrong, you need to make sure that your portfolios are protected. Correct?
Completely, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So, I mean, it might be fair to say, and this is a very generic comment on our industry, that there are some parts of the underwriting process that maybe are not as efficient as they are. I'm talking about, straight through processing maybe is not as smooth as some would claim. Presumably, AI for a company like yourselves is something that's going to really help with mending some of those fixes.
Absolutely, particularly I think with the sort of cleaner lives, and we already do use quite a lot of automation in that space on the sort of the cleaner lives. Yes, I think the trick is going to be on the more complicated lives, where those cases have to be referred and so on. And actually, when you're having to write to a GP to get a medical report, that's when the whole underwriting process gets really difficult. And really in the hands of each GP practice how quickly they'll reply, and that's really frustrating for the customer.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's no one's fault at all. It's across the board. But I would hope that some sort of AI efficiencies within GP surgeries will also help there in terms of producing reports. Because obviously, what insurers are going to say is, look, until someone tells us what that person's situation is, there's nothing we can do. So you would hope that might be some areas that. I mean, do you talk to organisations like the British Medical Association about these sort of situations? Do those conversations
We
happen?
probably do. I mean, I personally don't, but I mean, I'm sure the underwriting team do. The underwriting team don't report into me, but so to be honest, I'm not really that close to it. But I know I do know that we are doing a lot of work on how do we improve those processes, including the use of AI in them. Yes, so yeah, it's something that we're lobbying onto. And the trouble is, of course, that NHS, the GP practices are privately owned. The systems are all very different. They don't talk to each other in different regions. It's really I mean, it's just back into the NHS, which we're not going to get into, but it's very
Yeah,
clunky.
yeah. Now it's interesting you mentioned slightly more complicated cases. One of the things that your firm is at the forefront of advice on is business protection, and I think most
Yes,
advisors would say that you're one of the leading firms there.
yes,
It goes back for me to that growth agenda that the politicians are talking about. If the
yes,
idea is that so many more companies are going to be established in the UK and we're going to encourage an entrepreneurial spirit to come through, how
yes.
vital is it that people understand business protection, and what role would a company like yourself have in the educational part of that?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. It's linked to the advice gap that you just mentioned. There's, 25,000 or so advisors, quite a lot of whom aren't confident or trained in business protection, and that is in direct contrast to the growth in SMEs. And so there's clearly an opportunity for business there. I think what role does LNG play? It's really about education and helping with things like the targeted support for and training modules that we do through a market development team. We've got a brilliant team that does exactly that. So I would say, advisors could dial into our various modules, use them as part of their CBT training and so on, the hours that they have to complete. So I think we've got a big role to play in educating and making it as easy a process as possible. And of course, remembering that business protection sales quite often lead on to then a personal protection sale for an advisor. So it's usually not a one-off sale. Quite often, SMEs, the few SMEs I've spoken to, they haven't even thought about kind of the key man risk or that kind of thing. And yeah, it's a very low penetration market, isn't it? It's a big opportunity.
It's a massive opportunity, and I think the cross-fertilization point you made there, I've seen time and time again in that, of course, when you're tending to talk to decision makers in companies, very often they're pulled to one side at the end and go, any chance of you looking at my own portfolio, and
Yes,
that could be
yes,
protection and other things as well. So I think you're
yes,
right, but I still sense, and I think many people still sense almost a fear factor there. And you guys are one of the main contributors of a recent Business Awareness Week, which was run
yes,
a couple of months ago. And
absolutely.
I think what really came home that week again was the education piece, and how a
Mm,
company like yourselves can help show
yeah,
people that actually these subjects, yes, you need to know your stuff, but actually
yeah.
you can help in educating the advisor, who in turn can then talk to the
Oh,
consumer.
absolutely right. I mean, we had over 3,000, well, nearly 3,000, not over 3,000, nearly 3,000 advisors dialing into some of those sessions. I mean, I was really blown away by the level of engagement. We got fantastic feedback. Yeah, and so we've really looked at how we can do more of those, and we will be doing more of those types of weeks that was very, very successful.
Yeah, and I think it just fits in with the whole agenda of the whole education scenario. I mean, I'm old enough, unfortunately, to to remember when there were lots of direct sales forces there, where we, basically we were trained on all of these things, and with one or two exceptions, you don't really have those. I mean, there's one or two academies, but is that worrying now that you've been in a job for a while? Is that something that worries you in terms of when you talk to IFAs, that there seems to be a lack of education across the sector per se?
Um, Do you know, I don't lose sleep worrying over it. I sort of think of it more as an opportunity. I mean, I think what's interesting is that because we're not awash with advisors, I mean, advisors are finding ways to fill their boots with some type of business, and they tend to go down the route that they either know very well or that's very straightforward for them, and it's very successful for them. But I think. Yeah, it's not that it worries me so much. It's more that I think of it in terms of, as I say, in terms of an opportunity. And I think I mean, we've recently restructured our market development team. So I'm confident that we can do even more in that space, actually. I think it's a really important, not just us, but other big players too are helping to educate. So, yeah, I think it's an opportunity. And combined with AI, freeing up more time to enable advisors to go into more, to do more things like income protection, business protection, and so on. Um, and that should really help. So I'd say it's more of an opportunity than a worry.
Yeah, and several of the previous episodes, people have mentioned, the fact that advisors now will and should get more instructions from lawyers and accountants, who I think we can probably now say are hopefully more of a sister profession to ourselves. Is that quite important for you as well, that advisors go out and talk to those two professions in particular? Because obviously a lot of people, and I've seen statistics on it, and in fact your State of the Nation report used to make this point a lot, tend to go to their accountant and their lawyer first, actually, for solutions that they should be coming to us. But due to the
Yes.
lack of serviceability, and to
Yes.
your point, there are not enough people. How
Yes.
do we, as an industry, and how can an L&G help talk to more lawyers and more accountants about, about the solutions that we can provide?
That's a good question. I might ask you to turn that back on you and ask you what you think about in terms of how we can do. I mean, there's definitely more of an opportunity for that, particularly given the changes in IHG and so on. And we are getting, as a whole, all of insurers are getting a very significant uplift in sort of wealth-related business as a result of the changes to IHG, etc., coming from lawyers and accountants. So we're seeing that. What we've got to do is pivot our capacity to enable us to support more of that business, because it's clearly a high area of demand there for us. I don't know. What do you think, Roy? What do you think we should be doing more of?
I think there's again a small fear factor here. As someone who deals with lots of accountants and solicitors, I think it's that first journey that you need to get your head round. And actually, when we had things like the Business Protection Week, and you talk to people, once they start establishing relationships, it's actually easier than you think, because you've actually got an audience who probably are looking for you guys anyway. It's just that they want specialists, they want people to know what they're talking about. But
Yeah.
I think it's really important. I think that the L&Gs as well can help to give us the tools in order to have those conversations. So a really good example will be, key person insurance. There's no exact science. You and I have probably seen lots of different ways in which it should be worked out, but actually, it's good to have some sort of collaboration. And obviously, your guys won't come into the advice stage, but some collaboration
Yes,
about how some assureds are arrived at, and
exactly. Yes,
how key person needs to be reviewed as time goes by as well. Because
yes,
one of the things that worries me about a key person is that you come across people who say, "Yeah, I've got it already," and then you look at when it was taken out and it was donkeys years ago, and actually the sum
yeah, it's
assured's
not.
not appropriate anymore.
Yes,
So
yes,
I think that's where the technical
yeah,
departments that insurers can have, who are able to help,
yes,
with the caveat of no advice, advisors.
yes.
I think that's really, really important.
Yes, yes. No, it's a good thought. I mean, it's certainly something we should, if we don't already, include it in our sort of training. We perhaps do, to be fair, Roy. I haven't specifically looked at that. But I think you're right. And if I just think about my own, my own accountant, when I speak to my accountant, he's definitely got financial advisors that he recommends. So I think it's, it's an enhancement to their service, isn't it? So probably the door is open, and yeah, advisors should just reach out and build their
Absolutely.
networks.
So now, you probably guessed there's one subject I do need to ask you about, because it would be remiss for me to not. Consumer duty. We're a few years into this now. Obviously, there is an advisory angle, but there's an L&G angle to this. How are we doing? How does the scorecard look, would you say?
Well, look, we're doing really well on it. I would say. I think overall it's been a really good thing. I mean, we've sort of enhanced some of their processes as a result of the consumer duty. I mean, I think anything that is aimed at giving better outcomes for customers is something we should absolutely applaud, and anything that actually enables us to helps us to think about what the right questions are for us to ask our firms that are distributing our products is also something to be applauded. Um, yeah, it's been a lot of work and a lot of focus, but overall, I think it's been a really good thing. And yeah, we're in a very good place with consumer duty, and yeah, no doubt it continues to rumble on.
I mean, in particular, I think people would acknowledge it as help protection in, certainly, because a lot of our wealth cousins and mortgage cousins have sort of not woken up. I think they always knew protection was there, but yeah, suddenly it's something that you have to really talk about. So, would you
Definitely.
say protection has definitely been a benefactor of consumer duty?
Yeah, I would say. I mean, and actually, I'd also say that what's been really obvious is that a lot of advisors, of course, and unsurprisingly, have asked our thoughts on consumer duty and helping to support them. It's made them think too about what their obligations are, and yes, it's also completely enabled us to open up the conversation. And I've had lots of conversations where I said, "But why aren't you telling them about this protection? You really, how can you say that you're doing the right thing by the customer if you're not actually making them aware that that is something they should at least think about?" I mean, I personally am very much in favour of an opt-out solution for protection. I think customers should all be asked when they buy a mortgage, "Have you got it? If not, I need to tell you what it is," and then it's entirely their prerogative to say, "I don't want it, thank you," but at least make customers aware of the risk they're taking in not having it. And we obviously don't have to do that at the moment.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. And I also think where you ask, and the timing of where you ask, needs to be at the forefront of the advice, not something right at the end of the mortgage. Oh, by the way, there's something called protection, because they will
Absolutely.
recognise straight away if it's not important to you, it's not important to
Yeah.
them.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think it's interesting as well. It's sort of linked to it that, in the last however many years it is that sales, probably even since I've been in the industry, sales of life insurance, and you'll know this, Roy, have gone from sort of buying a term product to then in terms of volume, or in terms of, sorry, order in which the products are bought, term, then kick, and then income protection. Now that's really switching, and actually it starts with income protection, then kick, and then term. So people are really thinking about, yeah, sort of protecting their income and realizing the link to paying for their term insurance as well. These things are all, so I think that awareness is definitely growing, but there's clearly a massive protection gap still.
Yeah, I mean, the rise of income protection in particular, and again, you guys have been at the forefront of this, has been phenomenal. And someone that's been around for quite a long time, it's been a brilliant thing to see, because you're absolutely spot on. As an industry, we sold the wrong way round. We sold, life of about 1 million a year roughly. Critical was about 500,000, and poor old income protection was the poor relative down at sort of 150-ish. Now that's sort of turning around. And in fact, I saw something only last week claiming that income protection, hopefully in the not too distant future, will be at the same levels of kick, because the propensity of these things to happen is the wrong way around. We should be selling IP. Are you, as one of the sort of leading providers of IP, that presumably makes you very happy that those have gone up in terms of their numbers?
Absolutely. No, absolutely. It was an area I was quite excited about when I joined LNG some years ago now, and I mean, it's been a phenomenal growth story, hasn't it? IP and continues to grow. So yeah, I think it's great, and it's a not least because it's fulfilling a very important customer need. So yes, absolutely, but still more to do.
Still more to do. I mean, still the numbers I think are still, I mean,
Yeah,
broadly,
low.
there's about 3 million people in the UK that have IP,
Yeah,
with a working population of
yeah,
25 to 25 million to
yeah,
30 million,
yeah.
blatantly
So
not enough.
it's
I mean,
woeful. Yeah.
one has to be careful with this next sentence, but is that still because people have a misguided judgment as to what they'll get back from the state if they're off ill?
Um, that's an interesting question. And I guess given the sort of furlough scheme, which was essentially during COVID, which was essentially IP,
It was.
um, I think maybe there is an element that people will think that they get that. Yes, it's why when it's really important, one of the questions we ask is how much do you get if you are off sick from your employer? You know, how much do you think you're going to get from the customer? So we do prompt with those sorts of questions. Sorry, from the government, not from the customer. Um, but yes, I'm sure people either don't like to think about it, or when they do think about it, they like to think that there's more support available than is actually the case. And as I say, I don't think that view has, I think that's because there was this massive IP scheme, which was called furlough under COVID, and that's
Yeah.
encouraged people to still going. And of course, it's not.
Yeah, I mean, but dear old Rishi sitting at the dispatch box, I
Yeah,
remember him talking about. In
yeah.
fact, once he accidentally called furlough income protection, but actually
Oh,
that was
did
great
you?
news for our industry. Yeah,
Ah,
so
I had-
but does that go full circle to the theme of this podcast? Because have people still got a bit of a Mañana attitude? Maybe the awareness is increasing, but it's something that they'll put off to tomorrow, to next week.
yeah, and I think the cost of living doesn't help. I mean, realistically, people are struggling. And so I suppose everybody is guilty to some extent. It's an understandable deferment to next week, isn't it? When people are struggling, um, all it takes is for something to happen, or for something to happen to someone you know, and then you really realize how incredibly important it is, and critical it is not to defer that decision. So yeah, I think that's why it's incumbent on us to keep talking about it and keep actually sharing the case studies, which are always so powerful. Um, but yeah, there's always going to be an element of people putting off, and not least, and I have a lot of sympathy with it. People can't actually afford it, they think.
Yeah, although of course there is, and again, I'm sure you came out with a stat once that the perception of the cost of IP is nowhere near what it actually is in
Right.
reality. But that's something that
Absolutely,
we
and some covers
have to
better
get
than no
across.
cover. Yeah, 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 of
Yeah.
course.
And I should say, I know for a fact that you are fervent backers of the Income Protection Task Force, which is when you and I first met.
Yes,
Obviously, I'm
yes,
not so involved anymore, but there happens to
yes,
be an awareness week happening, which Legal and General furlough behind. So,
yes.
thank you for
Yep.
banging that drum, because I
My
think it's
pleasure.
really
Our
important
pleasure.
that we
Yeah,
we collaborate in that
I
respect. So, but,
completely agree. We're better, stronger together.
we're stronger together. Now, talking of together, I was doing some research on your good self, which hopefully you expect me to do. And because what fascinates me about larger insurers is the cultural side of it. And
Yes.
sometimes I think the thing that's thrown at that larger insurers is, my God, how do you exist with such a huge amount of people there? And I've read two very interesting quotes from your good self, so I hope you don't mind me
No.
reminding what you said. But
What did I say?
um, you said it's incumbent on the senior leaders to ensure that everyone has a voice and feels valued a few years ago. Could you just sort of
Mhm.
elaborate on that a little for me?
Mm. Yeah, I agree with that. Well, we've got a really big focus on speaking out at LNG, and I've got a really big focus on it in the team. So I do think that, as actually contrary to perhaps public or popular view, I don't work, there aren't thousands and thousands of people working in the sales team. In fact, our sales team is quite a bit smaller than our competitors, our key competitors, interestingly.
Interesting.
So, but when I have a meeting, for example, with people, I try. I try not to opine first on something. I try to listen and get others' views before stating my own. Because otherwise, obviously, some people are just going to agree with what I said, and whether they might agree, and that's fine. But I think it's really important. I'm very much into mentoring and development, and I think a very big part of my role, genuinely, I mean, a big part of my role is to ensure that people are in the right jobs, that they really can thrive and flourish. And if they're not thriving and flourishing and not really enjoying their role, then I encourage them to move on to another role, ideally within the team or somewhere else within L&G. But I want people to come to work and feel really valued. That matters to me a lot, and I'm not unusual in that at L&G. I think we all feel like that. We all give huge amounts of our lives and hours to our work, don't we? It's important to enjoy it. So yeah, I think it's absolutely, it's not my view. I think the reason I'm there is because of just by virtue of the fact that I've been working for nearly 40 years, I've been through most cycles of business, at least once. So I've got some experience, but it doesn't mean that I too don't need to always learn. And I'm always very interested in other people's views. So I think kind of somebody's got to be at the top of the tree, if you like. But my role is not to be directive. It's to encourage everybody else to put their view, because they're paid to be at L&G because we think they're good. And I genuinely want to hear what they think, because I certainly don't have all of the answers. So yes, I still very much
Which links to my
agree.
second quote that you said. I think you said 3 or 4 years ago. My personal driver is to ensure that we all practice listening to other people.
Good.
Which is basically
Very good.
what you've just said. So we have
Very good.
consistency.
Yeah, you can tell
But
that's genuine.
but
I didn't know I said so. That's that's true.
yeah, these are two Ali Crossley quotes. I can promise you. So
Excellent,
anyone can
Roy.
look them up.
Excellent.
But I think that the listening point is important for all of us in our lives, isn't it? At every level, it's very easy to get very, very busy and sometimes put our
It
heads down
is.
and not listen to other people around us. And it
It
sounds like you're surrounded
is.
by a very good team, lots of whom I
Yeah,
know already. But
I
it's
am.
different perspectives as well. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm surrounded by brilliant people. Yeah, really people who I admire, respect, have a lot of time for. Any of them could do my job. It's just, I sort of think we're all very lucky. I do feel very lucky to be doing the job I'm doing. It's incredibly interesting and it's a brilliant organisation I work for. I am very fortunate, but I do think, yeah, I mean, my name will be chip paper next, in a few years' time. It's not about me, obviously. It's about the team, isn't it? And we've got some, yeah, it's definitely it's all about listening. And then I think then for yourself as a leader, it's also about self-awareness, but also being not just being aware of perhaps your Achilles heels as a leader, but doing something about them. Yeah, so it's a never ending development.
And on that note, I'm talking about generically about our industry. I also get the sense as well, and I've watched you at conferences as well, that you generally want to go and listen to advisors as well, because you've made the point about people in your team, but your team is actually an advisory team as well, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, honestly, Roy, in an ideal world, I would have been. I wish I had been an advisor in my previous life, but actually, I haven't. Julie Godley was, as you'll know, and
I
that's
do.
a
Yeah.
big advantage. So I have a lot. Spend a lot of time listening to Julie and have a lot of respect for her view, because she's been there. And I think there's a great advantage in coming through the ranks and doing every part of the job if you possibly can. Obviously, that's not realistic. You can't do everything. Um, but yes, of course, I want to know the advisor's perspective, because they're the ones that are front line. If I don't understand the perspective, then I can forget selling to them. So yeah, and I'm actually genuinely interested in always learning and yeah, as I say, I wish I could go on the road for a few months. I sometimes think that, and just kind of do other people's jobs. That would be really valuable. And you might say, well, why don't you? And it's because there's always some fire going on that I need to deal with. There's always some reason why I can't.
No, it's great to hear, because I think not so much now, but I think there was a them and us sometimes in our industry, probably more 10, 15, 20 years ago. And I think largely that's been dissipated now. And it's really important we work together because we're working for the common goal, and that's the
Yeah.
consumer, the client, whatever we want to use. And
Yeah.
I think it's great to hear because advisors are at the coalface, and obviously we are seeing things firsthand, and sometimes find out problems way before the insurer does.
Yes.
And this chimes with everything we've talked about, because
Yes.
if we are going to, hopefully a society, come back and the growth's going to occur, it's
Yeah.
really important with the use of AI, to your point, that
Yeah.
we work together in a very clever fashion,
Absolutely. Yeah.
and listening to each other as well. So I mean,
Yeah.
you do sound very, but you do sound very glass half full to me. Is that a fair enough
I am.
perspective?
I remember my ex-boss saying I was perhaps sometimes too optimistic. That's one of my sort of development points. Maybe you're too optimistic, Ali, and too positive. And that just is in my nature, if I'm honest. Um, and I think, sharing a development point now, I think it's probably something that I'm aware of the risks of something sometimes, but my Achilles heel is that I might be too quick to kind of dismiss them because I think I can get over them, which generally is possible. But yeah, I'm excited. I think it's a great industry. There's still so much. There's loads to do. I work for a brilliant business, brilliant team. Yeah, so I am definitely cup half full.
Oh, great to hear. And would you say, I mean, are you personally a bit of a Mañana person? Do you put certain personal
No,
things off to tomorrow, or are
no,
you do things
no.
today?
I drive everybody mad, Roy, in my personal life as well as at work, probably, but certainly I don't ever sit still. So, I don't have time to watch TV. I just don't sit still. No, I never put off tomorrow. I've got always a long list of things I need to achieve every day, and I have to achieve them before I can go to bed. So I always get them done and, yeah, smash through my list.
Excellent, excellent. Well, Ali, it's been an absolute pleasure listening to you again, and I think it's a couple of things that have jumped out of this, that AI is definitely our friend. We've mentioned targeted support. I think just the whole collaborative piece of working together, and I love some of those cultural messages that you have within your firm that hopefully lots of us can learn and take into our own situations. But thank you very much for your time, and hopefully. Our listeners have heard some pearls of wisdom today. I'm sure they have.
My pleasure, Roy. Thank you very much. Good to talk to you.
See you very soon, hopefully.
Thank you.